No? Can you hear me now? Great. Y'all, thank you so much for coming to our farmhouse for this wedding. I've had a really great time so far. Have you all? Yes. So if you all don't know who I am, I'm Mike. I am Steve's older brother. I never really say I'm his bigger brother because I haven't been his bigger brother since the second grade. But I think it's been said a couple times already tonight, but it's really fitting that Steve would get married here. This is Steve's favorite place in the entire world. It's known as the Gibson family farm. To us, a little closer, it's known as the farm. But to Steve and to my dad and to a couple others, it's really just known as up there. And we make a few trips up here every year, and when it's getting close to farm time, you always hear Steve or my dad just say, man, I can't wait till we get up there. And then when we're here, they just keep repeating the phrase, man, it sure is good to be up there. And then the days after we leave, man, I just wish we were still up there. So Steve would get married here. It's awesome. It's a beautiful place. I have a couple of really fun memories with Steve at this farmhouse. And when you hand me the mic, you know I'm going to kind of go goofy. So I've got a couple of stories involving me and Steve and this place. The first one was about 5 years ago. It was the very first day of rifle season. The Gibson boys, we left to hunt up here. But when I was growing up, I never really got that memo. I was kind of too cool for that. I didn't want to hunt. And I was kind of, the outcast kid. But after my sophomore year of college, they convinced me to come up here for rifle season. And my dad and Steve, it was their proudest moment of me in their entire lives. That the prodigal son had finally made it home, and I was here for rifle season. And it was Steve's personal mission that day to get me a deer. So we woke up at 4:30 that morning because that's what you do when you go hunting. You got to get up before the deer do, apparently. And there was a foot of snow on the ground. It was 0 degrees out. We got all camoed up. And we made our way up the mountain, and Steve and I sat in the stand, and after about 10 minutes, I was like, man, it's cold. Now what do? He's like, we look for the deer. And we just kind of watched the snow fall for a couple hours, and I was frozen. Finally convinced him at about lunchtime to come back down, and we made it back down to the house. And a funny thing about my dad, you should know, when we grew up, he loves the house at about 55 degrees no matter what time of year it is. But here, his favorite temperature is 90. When he gets that wood stove going, it's a friggin' furnace in there. And so we thawed out in a minute and a half, and we were very hot. And so we were dressed down into our undies, and Steve started making us some lunch, and I fell asleep on the couch because we'd already been up for 9 hours at that point that day. And Steve all of a sudden, he just yells at me, he's like, dude, there's a deer! And I come to, and sure enough, there's a deer walking right out there, across, and I'm like, man, we spent all morning looking for this deer, and he just came right up to us. And so he was so pumped. He handed me the gun, we ran out on the porch, and I put down my first deer right over there. Thanks to Steve. I was like, man, experience tells me hunting is a lot easier than we make it. So Steve helped me get my first deer. The other story I think of when I come to the farm and Steve is that the time that this served as base camp for one of our most famous adventures, our great trip up north to the Canadian wilderness, where he and a couple of our buddies went bungee jumping. It was a couple hours north of Ottawa, so this was halfway between our house and there. We spent the night here, and the next morning we were up to the Great White North, except they don't talk like that where this place was. This was in Quebec, so they talked in French, like in France. Steve and I don't speak French at all. We get to this bungee jump place, and they line us up by size, biggest to smallest of who was jumping first. So Big Steve, he's up first, and the guy who is leading us in this, safety lesson of how to not die while bungee jumping, he is doing his best to talk to us in English, but is struggling. But what he does is one of these. He's like, "You need to dive in like a swimming pool," and he puts his hands up like this. And that was about all the instruction we got. And so little did we all know, that Steve had no idea how to dive into a swimming pool. All he had to go off of was this. So sure enough, Steve goes like this, and just jumps right in. There used to be video evidence of this. I'm sorry we don't have that anymore. It got burned or something. But Steve just... it was awesome. Funny enough, later on in life, Steve actually learned how to dive into a swimming pool by none other than Sarah. She taught him how to do that.
He even got a certificate for it.
He did. I saw it myself. So don't worry, Steve knows how to dive now. But about a year and a half ago, I took a trip down to Florida to visit my brother Steve. He had moved down there after college to work at a Young Life camp. My dad, my mom, and I, we went down to visit him to celebrate his birthday one year. And we got down there, and he lives with this group of 5 or so folks who are awesome, who are all there for the year. They were all kind of learning how to live life together and work together and serve the Lord in that way. And every time we were there, we were kind of doing stuff. We went out to dinner, we did a couple adventure things, and his friends that were there, they kind of came and went as they could, but one girl in particular, she was, mysteriously available for every single activity we did that weekend. I was like, who is this Sarah girl, and why is she so available? And at one point that weekend, I ended up on a canoe with Sarah. It was just she and I for some reason. And we spent about 2 hours kind of adventuring through the bayou and, saw a couple alligators and stuff. And I just asked her straight up, I'm like, so Sarah, is there any funny business going on here between the two of you? And she looks at me and she goes, would I be here if there wasn't? And a year and a half later, here we are at their wedding. Guys, I'm so happy to be here. Steve and I have been brothers. We've shared everything for as long as I can remember. Buddy, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man you've become. The way that you just serve the Lord tangibly with your hands every single day. Sarah, we are so happy to have you in our family. You look beautiful tonight. We're goofy. We think we're funny. The bad jokes will never end. But welcome to the Gibsons. Guys, let's raise a glass to our friends, Steve and Sarah. Woo!